Imagine this. You're trapped on a flat, open beach. The sea is behind you. Ahead, looming high above, enemy artillery waits. The ground shakes every few seconds as shells explode around you. The air reeks of smoke, blood, and damp earth. There's no cover, no escape, no safety. Soldiers would later call this place a perfect death trap. And it wasn't Normandy. It wasn't D-Day. This was Anzio. A battle so brutal, so desperate, so filled with twists of fate, that many who survived it swore it was worse than anything else they faced in the entire war. This is the story of a gamble that was supposed to end quickly, cleanly, and brilliantly, but instead turned into 4 months of unrelenting chaos. This is the Battle of Anzio. Let us rewind to January 1944. The Allies had been fighting their way up the Italian peninsula since the summer of 1943. Italy had surrendered. Mussolini was gone, but the Germans weren't giving up. They had dug in along what was called the Gustav Line, an almost impenetrable defensive wall of bunkers, minefields, and artillery hidden in the mountains. Imagine trying to punch through concrete and steel with nothing but flesh and bone. Every Allied assault on this line stalled, casualties mounted. The war in Italy was grinding to a halt. Something had to change. The idea was bold, even daring. Land behind the Gustav Line, near the coastal town of Anzio, just 30 miles south of Rome. Outflank the Germans, cut their supply lines, force them to abandon their mountain defenses. On paper, it was brilliant. A quick strike, a shortcut to Rome, and a chance to break the stalemate. The operation was called Shingle. It was a gamble. But war often rewards boldness, and many believed this would be the masterstroke of the Italian campaign. January 22nd, 1944. In the dead of night, an armada of Allied ships crept toward Anzio's shore. On board were over 36,000 men, Americans, British, Canadians, elite Rangers. They braced for what they expected to be hell on earth. Mines, barbed wire, machine guns, artillery raining down as soon as the first landing craft touched sand. But when they landed, they found something unexpected. Silence. The Germans were not there in force. Resistance was light, sporadic, almost non-existent. By sunrise, the Allies controlled the beaches. They had pulled off the landing with minimal casualties. It was almost too easy. One officer later said, "We could have marched straight into Rome." And here's the twist that turned success into disaster. Instead of pushing inland, instead of seizing the moment, the Allied Commander General John Lucas hesitated. He dug in, fortified the beachhead, and waited for reinforcements. He wanted security. He wanted strength in numbers. But in war, time is sometimes the deadliest enemy. That hesitation gave the Germans exactly what they needed: time to react. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, the German commander in Italy, saw the danger immediately. If the Allies broke out from Anzio, Rome could fall, and the Gustav Line would collapse. But Kesselring was no ordinary commander. Instead of panicking, he moved with precision. He rushed reinforcements toward Anzio: tanks, artillery, paratroopers, seasoned infantry. Within days, the easy landing had turned into a nightmare. The Allies were surrounded by German forces on higher ground, and the flat beachhead became a killing field. Now picture life inside that beachhead. Artillery fire rained down constantly. Every 30 seconds, another shell exploded. Soldiers couldn't walk upright without being targeted by snipers. They dug deep trenches, underground bunkers, and tunnels just to survive. They lived like moles in the earth, crawling through mud, waterlogged holes, and rat-infested shelters. Food was soaked in dirt, sleep came in broken fragments, and the constant scream of shells tore at sanity. One veteran said, "You could smell death everywhere. You breathed it in with every gasp of air." And yet, despite the nightmare, the Allies held on. Day after day, night after night, they endured, but endurance came at a cost. The battles within Anzio became their own tragedies. The US Rangers, tasked with a daring night raid on the town of Cisterna, walked into a trap. The Germans had prepared an ambush. Out of 767 Rangers who went in, only 6 made it out. 6. The rest were killed or captured. That disaster shocked the Allied command. Meanwhile, the Germans unleashed their artillery with merciless precision. Their most feared weapon was a massive railway gun nicknamed Anzio Annie. This monster could hurl shells over 30 miles, slamming into the beachhead with terrifying force. The Allies gave the constant bombardment a grim nickname, the Anzio Express. February brought the fiercest fighting. The Germans launched wave after wave of counterattacks, desperate to crush the Allies before they could break out. Infantry charged through smoke and fire. Tanks rolled forward, guns blazing. The Allies fought back with everything they had: rifles, mortars, artillery, even close air support. The ground turned into a swamp of mud and blood. Entire fields were littered with burning vehicles and shattered bodies. And still, the line held. For months, Anzio was a stalemate, a frozen battlefield of misery. Soldiers lived underground, fought in desperation, and wondered if anyone would survive. Letters home were filled with despair, but also with grit. No one wanted to be the one to give in. But wars are not won in a day, and sometimes not even in months. Slowly, painfully, the Allies built their strength. More men, more tanks, more planes. Supplies kept flowing in across the sea, even under fire. The Germans, meanwhile, were being stretched thinner and thinner. They had to hold Anzio, hold the Gustav Line, and prepare for Allied moves elsewhere. The pressure mounted. By May 1944, the time had come. The Allies cracked the Gustav Line at Monte Cassino, and with that breakthrough, the order was given: break out from Anzio. The soldiers who had been trapped for 4 months finally surged forward. It was brutal, close-quarters fighting, but this time the momentum was unstoppable. German defenses crumbled. The Allies pushed inland, advancing rapidly. And then, the prize: Rome. On June 4, 1944, Allied troops entered the Eternal City. Rome had fallen. But here's the cruel irony. 2 days later, on June 6th, the world's attention shifted. D-Day. The Normandy invasion began, and the liberation of Rome was overshadowed almost instantly. The soldiers of Anzio, who had endured hell for months, saw their story fade into the background of history. The cost of Anzio was staggering: over 43,000 Allied casualties, nearly 40,000 German casualties. Thousands of civilians caught in the crossfire, entire units wiped out. For some, the battle felt like a victory. For others, it was a needless slaughter. Historians still debate, was Anzio a brilliant idea executed poorly, or a hopeless gamble from the start? But for the men who lived it, Anzio was something else entirely. It was survival in the face of relentless fire. It was courage under impossible conditions. It was endurance against all odds. And perhaps that's why it should never be forgotten. Because Anzio is more than a footnote to D-Day. It's a story of resilience, sacrifice, and the razor-thin line between victory and disaster. It is proof that war is not just about bold plans and grand strategies. It is about the men who lived, fought, and died in places history almost left behind. So the next time someone tells you about the great battles of World War II, Normandy, Stalingrad, Midway, ask them this: what about Anzio? What about the soldiers who lived in holes, endured fire and steel, and still held their ground against overwhelming odds? History isn't just about the victories we celebrate. It's about the struggles we almost forgot. And Anzio, for all its chaos and bloodshed, deserves to be remembered. If this story opened your eyes, don't stop here. There are countless more battles, countless more stories that shape the world in ways we barely understand. Subscribe, join the journey, and together we'll uncover the secrets history tried to bury.